What is up, everybody? Welcome back to Real Horror. I'm Tensa, and today we're going to conclude Top 10 Month with my favorite horror movies of the 1990s. I'm gonna be honest, this was a rocky decade for horror. Not many fans were flocking to the theaters to see them like they were before, growing tired of sequels from franchises that had run their course. Not too many classics being released, but then a certain film in 1996 spawned an incredibly short rebirth in the genre that followed a particular formula that unfortunately got old quickly. However, the decade obviously wasn't a total loss. It was fairly easy for me to narrow down my top 10 favorites, but I'll list off some of my honorable mentions. I Know What You Did Last Summer, Leprechaun, Tales from the Hood, Tremors, In the Mouth of Madness, Army of Darkness, Wes Craven's New Nightmare, and Halloween H2O. I'll reiterate again that this is not the definitive list of top 90s horror. I haven't seen everything, so if something is missing, please just leave a recommendation and don't curse me out in the comments. And if you don't like the placement of movies that did make my list, just calm down and breathe. Everything will be alright if our opinions don't match. It's gonna be okay. So without further ado, let's get to my top 10 horror movies of the 1990s. Kicking things off at number 10 is Jamie Blank's 1998 Urban Legend. After Natalie's friend is killed, a string of murders that resemble urban legends begin to occur on her university campus. It's up to her to find out who the killer is and stop their campus slashing. I'm gonna be real with you here and let you know that this is more of a guilty pleasure for me than anything. It's not great by any stretch of the imagination, but I can remember watching this one quite a bit when I was younger after renting it from the video store. I like the whole idea of someone taking urban legends and making their victims a part of them. You have the person hiding in the back seat, a girl hearing screeches on her car that turns out to be her boyfriend hanging above, mixing Pop Rocks and soda, and aren't you glad you didn't turn on the lights? They're fun to see play out, but at the same time, some kills are just your typical slasher hit you with my axe kill, which is like, yeah, okay, whatever. The acting is nothing special as the characters are very bland. The main character, Natalie, is incredibly forgettable. You've got Jared Leto who walks around with the same blank stare and monotone voice, but Rebecca Gayheart is actually good as Natalie's best friend. There are also cameos from horror alumni including Freddy Krueger himself, Robert Englund, and Danielle Harris as the goth roommate. Don't feel like I'm being particularly kind to this one despite it making my top 10, but I do get enjoyment out of it in a weird way. While ridiculously simple, I like the outfit for the killer, the kills are pretty good, and the reveal of the killer is good, and in my opinion, they're somewhat justified in their actions, even though they're completely insane. Very nostalgia-driven for me. My number 9 is M. Night Shyamalan's 1999 The Sixth Sense. Young Cole is hiding the dark secret that he can see and interact with ghosts. Tormented by this gift, the only person he can seek help from is child psychologist Dr. Malcolm Crowe, who attempts to help Cole uncover the reason for his supernatural abilities. I remember how big this movie was when it came out. Sure, it was mostly because of its twist ending, but it's still an intriguing and scary movie. While Bruce Willis and Toni Collette put on good performances as Dr. Crowe and Cole's mom, it's Haley Joel Osment who undeniably steals the show. He is the creepy kid, but he's not evil like Damien Thorne or a reanimated killer like Gage Creed. He's simply a boy that knows too much, and the troubling impact his ability has had on him is tragic. He's encountering these gruesome and disturbing ghosts that act at times as though they're still alive. But to add to it, his relationship with his mother is being affected negatively. Malcolm tries his best to understand Cole and stick by his side throughout, but he's dealing with his own marital issues at the same time. It all builds to the shocking ending that many didn't see coming. The film was so popular that it got nominated for several Academy Awards, including Best Picture, Director, Original Screenplay, Supporting Actress in Collette, and Supporting Actor in Osment. It's a very well-made, creepy film and easily M. Night's greatest achievement. My number 8 is Bernard Rose's 1992 Candyman. While researching superstitions in the Chicago area, Helen learns about Candyman, the hook-handed urban legend that locals believe may be responsible for a recent death. Helen digs too deep into the legend and soon discovers that he may be all too real. Based on Clive Barker's short story The Forbidden, this is often considered a classic, and I'd agree. No one out there will ever attempt to say Candyman 5 times in the mirror in the dark thanks to this movie. It starts off more as an investigative mystery as Helen explores the lesser parts of Chicago hoping to uncover the truth and possibly debunk Candyman. She's even attacked at one point by a group whose leader refers to himself as Candyman and carries a hook around. She makes it out of of the assault alive and the police think they've caught the murderer. But then Helen starts to get visits from the real Candyman, played terrifyingly yet charismatically by Tony Todd. May be weird for a guy like me to say, but his voice is so alluring and haunting. His look is so appealing too, with the big fluffy trench coat, the hook that is attached to his severed hand, and the scenes where he's covered in bees is crazy gross. When he appears, it essentially switches from a mystery to a slasher as Candyman follows Helen and kills the people around her, putting her in bad situations that make it look like she's the insane murderer. By the end, you understand Candyman's obsession with Helen and what exactly his goal is. It's one of the most beautiful looking slasher movies I've seen, with a haunting score and iconic killer. My number 7 is Robert Rodriguez's 1996 From Dusk Till Dawn. The Gecko brothers, Seth and Richard, are on the run to Mexico after a bank robbery and committing several murders. Kidnapping a preacher and his children, they hold them hostage to make it over the border in the family's RV. However, after making it across, they discover that the topless bar they posted up at is home to a gang of vicious vampires. Right behind The Lost Boys as my favorite vampire movie, but what I love about this is that it really doesn't become a horror movie until about halfway through. It starts off like an action crime thriller with George Clooney and Quentin Tarantino, who are these intense criminals that don't mind getting their hands dirty when it's necessary in order to get away with their crimes. Clooney is surprisingly intimidating when he wants to be, and Tarantino is a psycho creep. They take this poor family hostage to get them to Mexico, and they manage to pull it off. So when that happens, you're like, wait, what the hell happens now? Well, the horror aspect kicks in when you find out their meetup bar hosts a den of vampires who start ripping apart everyone inside. It's such a left turn when it happens, but goddamn is it awesome. Watching Clooney and the preacher's family fight back includes some insane gore effects, along with some deaths and transformations that are amazing to look at. Tom Savini even pops up as a guy who goes by the name Sex Machine and has what I can only refer to as a dick gun. I love this one a lot for being able to set up a really good crime story with sorta likable antagonists and then evolve it into a blood-soaked vampire movie. My number 6 is again Robert Rodriguez's 1998 The Faculty. Harrington High is secretly attacked by a parasitic alien that takes control of teachers, having them infect students as well. It's up to a small group of classmates to stop this attempted alien takeover. This is like The Breakfast Club meets Invasion of the Body Snatchers. There are a huge amount of actors here where you're like, oh shit, they were in this? You've got Elijah Wood, Jordana Brewster, Josh Hartnett, Selma Hayek, Piper Laurie, Famke Jensen, Robert Patrick, Jon Stewart, and freaking Usher. It's so weird, but it's a lot of fun. It all starts when the gym teacher is turned into an alien by an unknown person, and it becomes a domino effect where the remaining faculty is also infected, who then go on after the students. The nerdy loner Casey slowly catches on to what's happening and assembles this mismatched group that includes a cheerleader, jock, druggy burnout, goth chick, and new girl in town. When they discover the alien's weakness, drugs. It's literally homemade drugs. They have a test to see which of them may be infected that is incredibly reminiscent of the test in The Thing. It borrows a lot from other movies, but this is another one I remember renting when I was younger, so it holds a special place for me. There are some great and not so great effects for the aliens, and the reveal of the head alien may be a little too obvious for some. However, it's the cast, their relationships throughout the chaos, and how they deal with the enemy that make it a fun ride. My number 5 is John Lafia's 1990 Child's Play 2. 2 years after the events of the original, killer doll Chucky is back after being reassembled by a toy company. Hell-bent on getting his soul out of the doll, he hunts down his former owner, Andy Barkley, who is now living in foster care. Yeah, I put it on the list. What are you gonna do? This is seriously one of my favorite horror sequels ever. I prefer it over the original as it goes balls to the wall and puts Chucky up front and center. You get more of his personality, and he becomes more of a fun villain because you can't take it so seriously since we're dealing with a killer doll. I like the original's creepiness, but I have more fun with the insanity of this one. For God's sakes, he beats a teacher to death with a ruler and has one of the best one-liners I've heard for any kill.
How's it hanging, Phil?
Alex Vincent also puts on a better performance as Andy now that he's a little older, and I like the relationship he forms with his foster sister Kyle. Each of them have individual encounters with Chucky that lead to one of the best horror climaxes ever in the Toy Factory. Is it scary? Although there are some creepy scenes, nah, not particularly scary. Does it have some good kills with Chucky spewing out one-liners that outdo Freddy Krueger? You bet your ass it does. My number 4 is Rob Reiner's 1990 Misery. After author Paul Sheldon crashes his car during a snowstorm, he's rescued by a local, Annie Wilkes, who claims to be his #1 fan. Taking care of him in her isolated cabin, Annie begins to show signs of violent and controlling behavior after discovering that Paul has killed off her favorite character from his novel. This is an adaptation of Stephen King's book, and man, it does a damn good job when it consists of just 2 people in a single room for like 80% of the time. It's such a good story about obsession and fandom. Not everyone who is an avid fan of someone is obviously as insane as Annie, but it comments on how twisted that love can get and that they're entitled for being a huge fan. Kathy Bates absolutely kills it in the role of Annie. She's able to put on a kind and caring attitude so convincingly, but when something irritates her even a little, she flips that switch and becomes insane. Then when something pisses her off, she gets downright psycho. Her ability to showcase that bipolar personality was impressive enough to get her the Academy Award for Best Actress. Unfortunately, James Caan as Paul is a little overshadowed by Kathy, but he does a good job too for being a guy that was stuck in bed and a wheelchair. He is totally helpless despite his best efforts to escape, and therefore you feel helpless, being left in the hands of a mad woman. There is also one of the most cringe-inducing scenes ever, thanks to the act of hobbling.
Shh, darling. Trust me.
God's sake.
It's for the best.
Eddie, please!
My number 3 is Daniel Myrick's and Eduardo Sanchez's 1999 The Blair Witch Project. Found footage shows 3 students traveling into the Black Hills Forest to collect footage for their documentary on the local legend of the Blair Witch. After traveling for several days and losing their way, they're afraid they may not be alone in the woods. This was a huge deal when it came out. It was the early days of the internet, and the advertisement for the movie made people truly believe that this was recovered footage of 3 kids who went missing and were presumed dead. Nowadays, it's well known it's just a movie, and a lot of people don't like it for being boring and not scary because nothing happens. I was originally in that camp when I was younger, but the older I've gotten, the more I think the movie is seriously scary. Even though we all know it's not real, it still has this very real feel to me, as the group doesn't feel like they're acting and are truly scared for their lives, going in what feels like an endless loop through this forest. The stories from the townsfolk that the group records before heading out are really creepy, especially the tale of Rustin Parr taking kids out into the woods and forcing them to face corners when he kills them. It's one of those you have to watch at night with all the lights off to get the full effect. The children laughing in the woods at night, the stick figures left outside the tents, and the sheer panic the group feels and the madness they fall into is frightening. I've said before that I like my gore effects, but this is an instance where less is more, and the ending still sends a chill down my back every time I see it. My number 2 is Jonathan Demme's 1991 The Silence of the Lambs. With serial killer Buffalo Bill on the loose, the FBI sends student Clarice Starling to interview Dr. Hannibal Lecter, a brilliant psychologist but dangerous sociopath, to see if he can offer any assistance. I think there's a bit of a debate on whether or not this is a horror film. A movie in which there are 2 killers, one who skins his victims and another that eats them, is debated as whether or not it's considered horror. It is, and it's a damn good one. So good that it won Best Picture, director, actor, actress, and adapted screenplay at the Academy Awards. You've got a great protagonist in Clarice, a young woman trying to overcome the adversity she encounters in a mostly male-driven environment in the FBI. A disturbing antagonist in Buffalo Bill, a man who kidnaps and holds women captive until he deems it necessary to kill them and take their skin to fulfill his own desires. And of course, you have Dr. Lecter, who is charming but also a manipulator who would eat your liver with some fava beans if given the opportunity. Clarice and Hannibal share such a weird, symbiotic, and sometimes romantic relationship. He's able to get her to divulge really personal experiences and tap into her insecurities, fears, and what drives her. He's an asshole, but he behaves in a way where you kinda convince yourself that you can't hate him. The hunt for Buffalo Bill is a great ticking clock because Clarice wants to find him before he kills his latest victim. While she struggles to decipher Lecter's clues, you actually see fucked up moments in Bill's house where he's keeping his next girl in a pit.
It rubs the lotion on its skin. It does this whenever it's told.
Ted Levine is underrated in this movie. His performance is scarily disturbing. This movie is a perfect blend of crime, thriller, drama, and horror, but also a good character study. And my number 1 horror film of the 1990s is Wes Craven's 1996 Scream. The small town of Woodsboro is stunned when the brutal murder of two teens puts everyone on edge. Sidney Prescott, who is still dealing with the death of her mother a year prior, finds herself the target of the unknown killer, referred to as Ghostface. This is in my top 10 horror of all time. I adore this movie for its unique characters who are already aware of the slasher horror tropes, but don't realize they're essentially living in a slasher movie. It has a good sense of humor about itself and the subgenre that I love. It's very scary at times, especially during the opening, which I consider to be the greatest opening in all of horror. Receiving harassing phone calls is nothing out of the realm of possibility, but to think you're being stalked and watched creeps me out. The Ghostface mask and costume is so simple, and yet it works perfectly because it could be anyone, and I think that's the point, to keep you guessing until the reveal at the end. That's part of the fun of Scream, is watching it with those who haven't seen it before and listen to who they think the killer is. I remember on my first watch when I was like 6 and constantly making guesses. The characters are excellent too. Sydney is one of my favorite final girls since she's pretty strong, smart, and fights back. I love Stu, played by Matthew Lillard, as he's so over-the-top frat boy but has some of the funniest lines in the movie. But my favorite is Randy, who a lot of horror fans, including myself, see as a kindred spirit since we can relate with the amount of knowledge we have about the horror genre.
Never, ever, ever, under any circumstances say, I'll be right back. Because you won't be back.
I'm getting another beer. You want one?
Yeah, sure.
I'll be right back!
That's the other thing I love about this movie, is that it can be fucking hilarious. Kevin Williamson's script was very smart thanks to his love of horror, but also fun. I catch myself quoting it a lot, and I could probably recite it from start to finish. I've seen it that many times. It's an all-time favorite of mine, and another gem of a slasher directed by the main man, Wes Craven. There you have it, my top 10 horror movies of the 1990s. What did I miss? What do you think I misplaced? Leave me a comment on your top 10 so we can have a fun discussion. Don't forget to subscribe and follow my Twitter and Instagram. Links to those are in the description. Next week, I'll begin a month of discussion videos. I've got some topics I think are fun to talk about regarding horror, so I want to get my thoughts out there, but hear what others have to say as well. So look forward to that in December. Until next time, peace.